Hello everybody, welcome back to Tea and Lit. In today's video I'm going to be sharing with you my November TBR. So if you have a cup of tea, if you got a cup of tea, now's a good time to grab it and let's talk about some books. So this month is focused on dystopias and dystopias. So this month is focused on dystopias, and the reason being is that it's an election year and it's 2020 and it's been rough, and so I feel like if there's any time to read a dystopian novel, it is now. So the books here for the most part are dystopias. For the most part. First, the one that we're going to talk about is 1984 by George Orwell. This book we are going to be doing, my brother and I are going to be doing a discussion for, so it will get, all the stuff. Basically, George Orwell wrote this thinking about how the world was going to be basically a catastrophe by 1984. Like, that was the inspiration. Like, the world was headed down a dark path, and by 1984, basically humanity would be entirely screwed up, and so he wrote this book. The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. So it says, Winston Smith toes the party line, rewriting history to satisfy the demands of the Ministry of Truth. Does it sound like what we have going on now? Rewriting the truth. With each lie he writes, Winston grows to hate the party that seeks power for its own sake and persecutes those who dare to commit thought crimes. Thought crimes. Cancel culture? Kind of sounds like it. But as he starts to think for himself, Winston can't escape the fact that Big Brother is always watching. Your camera is always on. Your microphone is always on. A startling and haunting novel, 1984, creates an imaginary world that is completely convincing from start to finish. No one can deny the novel's hold on the imaginations of whole generations or the power of its abominations, a power that seems to grow, not lessen, with the passage of time. So my friend and I were talking about this book months ago, like in spring. I think we talked about it last year, and he had bought it, I think, but he hadn't read it yet. And then in spring, I called him. I was like, hey, I feel like we're in the midst of a 1984-esque situation. Have you picked up that book yet? And he hadn't at the time. So I don't know if he has now, but I'm going to read this and then send him in this video and see what he thinks of it and see if he wants to maybe buddy read it. I don't know, because Keith and I are buddy reading it. So 1984 by George Orwell feels like it's going to be a good book for this moment in time. Another one that I have is Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. I remember liking this book when I read it in high school, and basically it tells the story of a dystopia where all of the books are burned and paper burns at 451 degrees Fahrenheit. And the idea is that people they don't have access to good literature, and so they are, stupid and don't really realize how stupid they are. Guy Montag was a fireman. Oh, the system was simple. Everyone understood it. Books were for burning, along with houses in which they were hidden. Guy Montag was a fireman whose job it was to start fires, and he enjoyed his job. He had been a fireman for 10 years, and he had never questioned the pleasure of the midnight runs nor the joy of watching pages consumed by flames. Never questioned anything until he met a 17-year-old girl who told him of a past when people were not afraid. Then Guy met a professor who told him of a future in which people could think, and Guy Montag suddenly realized what he had to do. So with both of these books, it talks about thinking. Like, do you have the capacity to think? Should we encourage people to think? And I think that, a good culture, a good system will encourage people to think for themselves and to learn for themselves and give people access to information. My local library has a quote on the wall that says there's no place in a community so truly democratic as the town library. I don't even know who said it, but I love that quote, and I think it's really important that we always try to think for ourselves and to not be stuck in with what we believe is true to the point that we don't listen to what other people have to say, because perhaps other people have something relevant to share. Anyway, the next one is The Handmaid's Tale. This has a show, of course, and I have read this book, but I'm looking forward to reading it again. And in Margaret Atwood's dystopian future, environmental disasters and declining birth rates have led to a second American Civil War. Environmental disasters, literally California is burning right now. Declining birth rates, we have seen that, but I imagine that after the COVID crisis, we will have a baby boom. The result is the rise of the Republic of Gilead, a totalitarian regime that enforces rigid social roles and enslaves the few remaining fertile women. Offred is one of these, a handmaid bound to produce children for one of Gilead's commanders. Deprived of her husband, her child, her freedom, and even her own name, Offred clings to her memories and her will to survive. At once a scathing satire, an ominous warning, and a tour de force of narrative suspense, The Handmaid's Tale is a modern classic. So this I bought new. Margaret Atwood is still alive. So one of the things that I talked about in the past is how I really love buying used books, but when the author is still alive, I do go ahead and buy it new because I do want to support the author. And I read this book as a borrow from a friend, and so I bought my own copy. Next up is Utopia by St. Thomas More. It says Sir Thomas More, but he is a saint in the Catholic Church. I just Googled like great dystopian classic books, and this came up. I actually had never heard of it. More's Utopia is a complex, innovative, and penetrating contribution to political thought, culminating in the famous description of the utopians, who live according to the principles of natural law, but are receptive to Christian teachings, who hold all possessions in common and view gold as worthless. Drawing on the ideas of Plato, St. Augustine, and Aristotle, Utopia was to prove seminal in its turn, giving rise to the genres of utopian and dystopian prose fiction, whose practitioners include Sir Francis Bacon, H.G. Wells, Aldous Huxley, and George Orwell. At once a critique of the social consequences of greed and a meditation on the personal cost of entering public service, Utopia dramatizes the difficulty of balancing the competing claims of idealism and pragmatism. I really love that. Idealism and pragmatism. I think that's going to be fun to read. And continues to invite its readers to become participants in the compelling debate concerning the best state of a commonwealth. So, I look forward to reading that. It was in the philosophy section at the used bookstore, so if you want to know, that's where that was. Next up, our Shakespeare play of the month is going to be Pericles. If you saw last month's video, I read If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. Absolutely loved it. And the ending referenced Pericles. And so in order to know what the heck the ending was all about, I have to read Pericles. So we're going to go through that. And then the last book is the second book in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. As you guys know, I've been doing the Tolkien along with the Frolic Through Fiction and Book's Nest. And so we will be reading The Two Towers, I think is what it's called. Let's see. Book 2. It just says book 2. Oh no, that's still the Fellowship of the Ring. The Return of the King. No, that's the last one. The Two Towers. Final answer. So in November, we will be reading The Two Towers from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So these are the books that I hope to get through this month. We'll see how it goes. As you guys know, I typically read 4 to 5 books in a month, but you know, some of these are kind of short. Like Utopia is kind of short. One of them's a Shakespeare play, so hopefully we can get through them. We'll see. I feel like Fahrenheit 451 isn't super long. So, review. 1984 by George Orwell. If you guys want to see us go through this and do a discussion, then please hit the subscribe button. Next up we talked about is Fahrenheit 451. Next up is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. Please let me know in the comments if you would like to see like a reaction video to the show. I have watched it all the way through once. I think I watched season 1 twice, and then I watched seasons 2 and 3 once. And it's not like a direct adaptation. It's like inspired by the show is on Hulu. Let me know if you ever want to see reaction videos is what I'm trying to say. I've said this in the past. Let me know and I will do that for you. Next up is Utopia by St. Thomas More, Pericles by William Shakespeare, and The Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien. So these are the books that we hope to get through this month in November, because we are taking inspiration from what's happening in the world. It is an election year. It has been a tough 2020, and I'm hoping that, you know, regardless of what happens in November with the United States presidential election, that we, as a community of people in America, all 350,000 of us, 350 million of us, find a way to overcome, cooperate, work together. I think that I really want to say something right now because I just think it's important, because I feel like we don't do this anymore. I always assume that the other person that I'm dialoguing with loves the country as much as I do, loves the people in this country as much as I do. And when you come from a place that you assume the best of somebody, you can have a more productive dialogue. And I really hope that we can get back to that point. I think we've been in that point in the past, where you assume that somebody loves the country, they just love it differently than you do. I would love to get back to that place where we can assume the best of somebody until proven otherwise, and say, you know what, you love the country in a way that's different than the way I love the country, but that doesn't mean you don't love the country, or that doesn't mean you don't love that you don't love, because that's what we need. That's what we need, America. Thank you guys very much for watching. Please subscribe, like this video, comment below, and in the description there are things you can purchase. If you want to support this channel, it would really mean a lot to us. We would really appreciate the help. Thank you. Bye.